Good morning, Skallywags, and welcome to another episode in this series of Enigmatic events. I'm Spoo.
I'm AJ.
And of course, this is part 4 in our 4-part miniseries discussing 3 different cases of unidentified bodies that were found in Norway, all of which died under very mysterious circumstances, had no identification, no labels, no tags, no nothing on any of their clothes or belongings, and were all thought to have died by suicide, even though the evidence would suggest strongly otherwise.
If you missed part 1, 2, or 3, please go back and watch them, because in this part, we are going to discuss what we think ties all of these things together. There are many outlandish and sometimes crazy theories. We're going to throw those out there a little bit, but there might be some weight to some of these that tie back all the way to World War II.
So bring out the tinfoil hats, kids, because we're about to enter conspiracy territory, especially in one little part that we did just for fun. But this could get a little weird, just so you know. Just throwing that out right up front.
But it's fun.
Yeah, totally.
If you kept up with the cases that we talked about before and you watched our previous shows, you know that we talked about 3 unidentified people who were found in Norway. And that is actually a big number because in Norway, there is only 15 unidentified people in their country.
That's not this year or per year. That's 15 cases total.
So we're talking about 1/5 of Norway's unidentified bodies.
Yes, and in case you missed the first 3 episodes, they were the Isdal Woman, the Oslo Woman, also known as Jennifer Fairgate, and the Kambo Man. So go back and check those videos out if you missed them. Okay, so to reiterate, you got 3 cases of unidentified bodies found in Norway. No identification, no identifying labels or tags on any of their clothes, any of their belongings. All 3 were considered to be suicide, even though the evidence says otherwise. Yeah. All 3 were believed to be or claimed to be from Belgium or near Belgium, except for possibly the Cambo Man, who, for whatever reason, they said he was either from Eastern Europe, like Belgium type area, or possibly from Colombia, which is a pretty far stretch. And for all intents and purposes, all 3 of them are believed to be spies, possibly. So, having said that, let's recap a little.
First, we talked about the Isdal Woman, who was found dead November 1970 near Bergen, Norway, in Ice Valley. She was found with 50 to 70 sleeping pills in her stomach, but the front part of her body burned, and that is actually how she died.
Yes, she had soot in her lungs and died of carbon monoxide poisoning from burning alive.
Among her belongings, which were found in a train station not near her body, they found wigs, 9 passports with fake names. They found eczema cream and all kinds of money, and even money hidden in her suitcase.
Yeah, and her death was considered a suicide, like you do, setting yourself on fire and whatnot after taking a ridiculous amount of sleeping pills. But anyway, up next we discuss the Oslo Woman, again also known as Jennifer Fairgate. Found dead in a hotel in Oslo, Norway in June of 1995. At check-in, she gave her name as Jennifer Fairgate, although 2 separate times during her stay, she spelled her own last name wrong.
I do that all the time.
I know, yeah, right? A security guard had actually gone to her room to collect payment for staying in the hotel. Right as he knocked on the door, he heard a single gunshot come from inside. He ran down to call the police.
Well, he stayed at the end of the hallway.
He kind of hung out for a little bit to make sure no one ran out, but then ran downstairs to call the police, leaving the room unattended for about the next 15 minutes. When authorities entered the room, they found a woman laying dead on the bed. She had a single gunshot wound to her forehead. She was holding a 9mm gun upside down and backwards in her right hand. No blood, no fingerprints on the gun, which... how does that happen? Yeah.
No gunshot residue either.
Yeah, no blood, no gunshot residue, no fingerprints on the gun. There had also been a second shot that had been fired at some point in time that had gone through the bed. There was a man who had checked into the room with her by the name of Louis Fairgate, but after checking in, this man was never seen again. She had left the hotel for about 20 plus hours the day before she was found dead, and that same day had ordered some room service, didn't order anything else, between then and the time she died, and yet there was undigested food found in her stomach, which means that she either ordered the food, then waited a day before she ate it, or she died the day before they thought she did, and the second gunshot they heard was the one that went through the bed.
Dun dun dun.
So did she commit suicide or was she murdered?
Well, they thought it was suicide.
Another suicide.
At least that's what they said. Now, the third case that we talked about was the Kambo Man.
Right.
A little bit different than the other two cases, but still intriguing.
Yeah.
He was found dead September of 1987 on the railroad tracks between Moss and Oslo near Cambo Mill, giving him his name. He was found slumped over the tracks with his right arm and foot cut off, presumably being hit by a train. Unlike the other two cases, he was in casual clothes. The two women were known to dress fancy.
Yeah.
He was dressed in casual clothing, even like thrift store style clothing,
Right.
except for shoes, which were considered really high dollar and very fancy with very specific reasons they were made. And there was a note inside his shoe that was found 30 years after his death.
The code was a small piece of paper that was actually taped to the inside of the shoe, not just like look in it and there it is, but actually between the outer and inner layers of the shoe, just a small piece of paper that said 15250. And to this day, we have no idea what that means.
It has not been deciphered, and yet his death too was ruled a suicide. Now, out of the three cases, his death to me lends itself a little bit more to suicide than the other two, but with all the other evidence that we've found, maybe not so much.
But what was not mentioned in the previous episodes were how these people might be connected. Other than the obvious theory out there, but ways that might actually lend a little more credence to that theory.
Yeah.
So first up, let's take a look at where these deaths occurred at. The Isdal Woman was found dead just outside of Bergen, Norway. Now, her travel itinerary showed that she moved around quite a bit. She traveled to Stavanger, Trondheim, Oslo, Paris, Hamburg, and Basel, Switzerland before arriving back in Bergen. So she actually was in Bergen twice. She had also stayed at more than one hotel during her second stay in Bergen, and during the second hotel stay, she was actually known to have changed rooms several times.
So what do these cities have in common? What can we gain from this knowledge of her itinerary? Well, all of them have consulates, except for Oslo, which is the capital of Norway, so it has the embassy. This is actually quite interesting to me that she visited all these places with consulates.
Yes, the first of many coincidences.
Yes. Of the cities that she went to, all of them not only have consulates, but have huge ties to all kinds of different military things. Bergen, where she was found dead, is a huge port, and it was actually the first city to fall to the Nazis in World War II. Paris, of course, was huge on both sides, and then when it fell, they did move from Paris to Norway, the Nazis did. So that's a big one as well. And of course, Hamburg was the last defense for the Nazis in the north.
And then there's Basel, Switzerland. That one kind of stands out a little bit from the rest of them.
Well, it's Switzerland.
Right.
They're
and of
neutral.
course, Switzerland famously neutral during World War II. Or were they? Turns out that back in the 1980s, a group of French spies were actually arrested in Basel for trying to sell Swiss bank account secrets. The rumor being that some of these accounts that they were trying to sell the information to belonged to the likes of Mossad, the CIA, the KGB, and the Nazis.
In fact, Basel, even up till last year, has been known as a hotspot for economic espionage.
Another fun fact about the little itinerary is that literally every single one of those cities that she visited were also places where U-boats were manufactured by the Germans during World War II. In fact, Bergen even had the very first U-boat bunker codenamed Bruno. Bergen was also home to all of the top Nazi engineers, techs, scientists, senior naval officers. After Paris fell, they all moved to Bergen, and Bergen is the only place where the German XX-1 submarine, which at the time was the most advanced submarine in the world, because it was the only one at the time that could spend several days underwater, and well, Bergen just happens to be where those were built.
Another possible spy connection is the places that she stayed.
Uh-huh.
So the list of hotels that she stayed at, when she was there was another group of people staying the same time at the same place. And this group of people were part of the Norwegian Defense Research Establishment. They're the ones who are in charge of testing a very important thing, the Penguin missile. Now, if you don't know what the Penguin missile is, it's an anti-ship missile that is still the #1 world-leading anti-ship missile today.
So you've got this entire group of people that are there testing that missile, staying in these hotels at the same time as the Isdal Woman. In fact, there were a number of witnesses that said that they actually saw the Isdal Woman at the Penguin missile tests themselves, which kind of indicates that if she was a spy, she might have been trying to, seduce her way into information and that type of thing. And as far as the Penguin missile is concerned, don't worry, it will come up again.
Okay, so lastly, and this is a bit of a stretch, but I have fun with this. We actually took her aliases. She had the fake passports with all the different names on it, and I took them and rearranged them into anagrams. I just wanted to see what I could come up with from the names that she gave. A lot of them were fun. Out of the 8 names, 4 of them had the word clean or cleaner in it, which, if anyone knows anything, clean or cleaner means assassin or cleaning up, assassinating people. That's a thing.
What's that, the famous guy from the Jimmy Hoffa case, the I paint houses? Stuff like that.
One of them being Vanilla Lorch, which was one of the ones that she used. If you mess around with those letters, it is like clean for hell. Yeah, which I found interesting. Claudia Tilt I found it fun just because I could mix up those letters and I called it. What did she call?
But perhaps most interesting. So out of all of the aliases that she used the name Leenhaufer twice. And it's the only one that she used twice, and she used those 2 last. So they were the last 2 aliases that she used.
At both the last 2 hotels in Bergen.
Right. Yes, exactly. So last 2 she used, both in Bergen. It's the only time she used the same last name. First, she used Miss Leenhaufer at the Hotel Rosenkrantz. Then she goes on to use Elizabeth Leenhaufer at the Hotel Horteheimen. Well, if you take the letters from the first hotel stay, so Miss Leenhaufer, kind of scramble those around a little bit, you get Seen Mer Wolf. Well, Mer is actually another word for German. So Seen German Wolf. So then she changes hotels and uses the name Elizabeth Leenhaufer.
If we take the same anagram kind of thing for that name, we get unable. The wolf is here.
Oh.
So what does this mean? Who is the wolf? The German wolf? And what was she unable to do?
Could be literally anything. So grab the tinfoil hats. Again, we know that this one is a stretch. This is our own little conspiracy theory point. We will get into facts again here very shortly, so bear with us. So first, we have to acknowledge the fact that the Isdal Woman, she had a tendency to move around a lot.
Yes.
Pretty much all of her stays were no more than a day or 2 at most until right there at the end. That is until she arrives back in Bergen. Again, this is her second time there. This time she checks into the Hotel Rosenkrantz and only stays for 1 night. And this is where she says, seen German wolf. She then moves to the Hotel Horteheimen, where she checks in and stays for 4 nights. Unable, the wolf is here. And again, we must stress, never used the same last name, same alias. There were two of them that had the same first name, but as far as like a last name, a surname, she never used the same one twice until these last 2 stays. And as far as, well, what is German wolf? What does that mean? Well, there's a German that's probably the most prominent German ever, who is very well known for calling himself Wolf or Herr Wolf or the Werewolf. His actual name itself even means Father Wolf. His base was called the Wolf's Lair.
You guys do know
you know who I'm talking about, right? His name is Adolf Hitler, who, by the way, also used eczema cream.
Yeah, when we were doing the research, we were like, why eczema cream?
That's so random out of everything.
And then when we did this and I did all the anagrams and it was like German wolf, we were looking up Hitler, and one of the things we found
we literally typed in Nazis with eczema, and Hitler pops up immediately. So like we said, guys, we'll get back to the facts here in a minute. We wanted to have some fun with this for a minute, and I mean,
it's fun, but.
I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, a couple of coincidences you can say, okay, that's just a coincidence. But there are there's too many coincidences in this one story to ignore. So when it came to all of this stuff adding up to this, and then all of the other little connections to World War II that we're going to get to, it was a smack in the face. It just jumped out and said hello. I mean, you couldn't ignore it.
So you guys can all blame me for the anagrams. While he was doing some of the research, I was just playing around with the names. Right. And I came up with those, and I was like, oh gosh, that's actually creepy.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of Hitler, there are lots of theories around his death. People say he staged his death, that he went to live in Argentina or South America, Colombia, all those different places down in South America.
And of course, he would have been, this was 1970, so he would have been 91 years old at this point in time. But I mean, who's to say he didn't want to live out his last days, right there near home, but without being too conspicuous? I mean, you're right there.
Right.
It's one country away. Why not?
And for that matter, just because he was called Wolf or he called himself Wolf, that doesn't mean anything. It could be someone else high in the German army, the Nazi army that she saw. We don't know.
It could be nothing. It could have just been us having fun, or rather, I should say, it could have been AJ having fun while I was researching, and we thought that there were a few fun things in there that fit with the story, so why not throw them in? So, yes, anyway.
So, all that fun that we had with Isdal Woman and her aliases and the anagrams and everything, don't forget, we did put in some facts there, and please pay attention to those, because now we're going to talk about the Oslo Woman.
Yeah, we're back to facts now.
Although we don't know as much about Jennifer Fairgate or the Oslo Woman or whatever you want to call her, we don't know her itinerary as much because she didn't keep the records or we didn't find the records. We do know some things.
Of course, we've already discussed the importance of Oslo itself, but what we also have is the hotel itself. The Oslo Plaza from May 31st through June 2nd, 1995. Well, what is significant about the Oslo Plaza Hotel from May 31st through June 2nd of 1995?
I mean, other than Jennifer Fairgate?
Other than a random unknown woman being killed or possibly committing suicide in a hotel room. Turns out that this also happens to be the location and the dates of the Oslo II Accords.
Do you guys know what that is?
In case you don't know what the Oslo II Accords is, this is where Israel and Palestine sat down to have peace talks and border talks. Basically, you think of the 90s, you think of, West Bank, Gaza Strip, all of those things. Yeah, they were all discussed at that hotel on the same time that Jennifer Fairgate was there having her incident.
And they were secret meetings.
Yeah.
It's not like they were announced. These were secret meetings between these two countries to try to determine and get peace.
Right. So you got the Israeli Prime Minister. Mm-hmm. You've got the Palestinian chairman. You've got a whole bunch of guys from NATO. They're all there in that hotel secretly at the exact same time that all of this other stuff is happening.
So you take that into consideration, and then you take into consideration what we told you was the only possessions found in Jennifer Fairgate's room, which is the gun that was used to kill her, held upside down, and a briefcase full of bullets. If you're trying to kill yourself...
That was it.
Yeah. If you're trying to kill yourself, you don't need more than one, and she had a briefcase full of them. So what was she there to do? Was it an assassination? Was the talks her target? Did it get spoiled? Did somebody wipe her out before she could do the same?
I mean, unlike the tinfoil hat stuff with the Isdal Woman, that one's got some pretty big plausibility to it.
Well, and the CIA agent, the ex-CIA agent, during Unsolved Mysteries, he said that his theory was that she was an assassin who got eliminated. Yeah. She was there for a job. Yeah, hers does tend to have more weight.
Yeah.
But that does bring us back to our final case, which was our episode 3, and that was the Cambo Man.
So if you saw that episode, then you know that there's less evidence or less information on him, and then just more speculation. So you would probably think that when it comes to connecting these 3 cases, we don't really have much to go on with the Cambo Man. But, oh my God, would you be wrong?
First of all, the Cambo Man was found in 1987. Now, this is the height of the Cold War between Russia and everybody else. What we mentioned just a little bit was that the Cambo Man's body was found near a NATO installation. That installation is part of the Nike missile system. The missile system is kind of related to another missile system that we talked about earlier with the Isdal Woman, the Penguin missile system. See how they're connecting a little bit?
Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Turns out that this area of Norway was not just used for like missile construction and things like that, but it was also a pretty regular NATO missile testing ground.
Yeah.
Basically, you've got the USSR right there on the northern tip of Norway, so this was a pretty regular testing grounds for all kinds of missile systems.
Like the Nike system, which was
Nike, the Penguin,
primarily
all of those.
For
an anti-USSR, yes. In fact, the area kind of surrounding this this area, it had a lot of really weird, suspicious activity going on that actually involved NATO vehicles.
Yeah.
Specifically, embassy vehicles. Now, I couldn't find exactly what kind of suspicious, just suspicious. But whatever it was bad enough that local law enforcement actually put a complete ban on any kind of traffic into the area for any kind of foreign vehicle.
Yeah.
Any kind. Doesn't matter. NATO, embassy, does not matter. If you are a foreign vehicle, car, truck, plane, I don't know about planes, but
helicopter,
what have you, if you were a vehicle that was not from Norway, you were not coming in to this area.
Yeah.
A short time later, they even found a small abandoned camp just outside the grounds for the little NATO installation. So they actually thought that there were either spies that were taking a look at the place, or perhaps they were being targeted by terrorists for that matter.
Right.
And the fact that there was just a small abandoned camp near a NATO facility, leading them to believe that they had been watched by spies. Need I remind you that the Cambo Man was on foot.
He was, we're talking within a couple miles of all of this.
If you remember, we mentioned that where the Cambo Man was found, that it was a hard to access area with the sea on one side and a steep hill that led to a forest on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, what's on the other side of this forest? I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count.
It's the NATO installation for the Nike missile system.
Ding, ding, ding.
It's also worth noting that Norway feared another invasion. You got to think. Norway was invaded in World War II by the Nazis. Bergen was the first city to fall. The Nazis occupied Norway for 5 years.
Yeah.
During those 5 years, they were kind of helpless, or they felt helpless. Well, Norway has a plan in place. And this plan, especially in the 1980s when they were fearing Russian invasion, was that they have military equipment, guns, all kinds of stuff, but they don't have them just like in military bases. They have them hidden throughout the country in little outbuildings, caches, barns, in the wilderness, in the nowhere places.
And guess where these barns were? They were right there along the railroad tracks.
It's true. They like to have them close enough that if there's an invasion, they can get them to where they need to go quickly.
In fact, it's actually said that Norway has a secret army. At the end of the Cold War, they were said to have a military of around 20,000 personnel. But they could instantly grow to a mobilized military of over 160,000 troops in 13 brigades and dozens of units in the event of an invasion. They could do this literally overnight.
That's 8 times the soldiers.
You send out a phone call or an email and boom. All these guys are just sitting by in their cottages and their barns with all these little caches of weapons just sitting there just waiting for the word. And believe it or not, it's not all that surprising.
You may have noticed that we talk about World War II a lot. During this breakdown.
We keep teasing it. Here it is.
This is because, as I said before, back in World War II, the occupation of Norway was huge. And during this, the Norwegians formed the Norwegian Resistance Movement. This group fought between 1940 and 1945 underground to get Nazis out of their country. They protected their politicians. They got them to safety. They evacuated them. And all of this stuff happened because of this group.
And they were extremely effective at what they did. In fact, it is actually said that the NRM is directly responsible for Hitler not getting his own nuclear bomb. Like, we owe what we think of as World War III. Well, we owe that not happening
to them.
To them.
So what does this have to do with the 3 cases we've talked about? Well, a little bit. Outside of all the cases happening in Norway, 2 of them were thought to be from Belgium, or at least claimed to be from Belgium. Now, the Cambo Man is, they think, from like Belgium, Germany, or Colombia.
And we mentioned that the NRM was formed back in World War II. Well, since then, the Norwegian resistance movement has kind of transformed into what is now called the Norwegian Intelligence Service. And many of the people that originally worked for the NRM went on to become involved in the intelligence service, or have been picked up by installations like MI5 or the CIA or various other espionage groups.
Yes.
They're very active and very well known.
Mossad, some of them went to Mossad.
Right. So the fact that this group is still not only active, but more active now than it even was then, there's your tie-in to the 3 cases we've talked about.
It's also believed that this group has been strategic in hunting down SS officers. Now, these officers have been found in Norway, in Belgium, and even in Colombia. So not only do we tie it back to that, but it's tied in a little pretty knot.
Yeah, nice little bow, nice and wrapped up for you professionally, like one of those fancy places, like
you have no idea,
like JCPenney.
It's a fancy place.
I don't know why that was the first thing that popped in my. I know, it's called a joke. But whether the connection is World War II or the Cold War or NATO or something we didn't think of, or
things we didn't talk about,
or eczema cream,
or things we didn't talk about because there was a lot.
Tons of theories. I mean, we could literally sit here for hours and speculate over what the connection might be, but the ones that we've kind of laid out here today are some of our favorites. Obviously the anagram one was just for fun, but the other ones we think hold the most water as far as something concrete. But yeah, I mean it would take too much screen time to sit here and talk about theories all day
on these 3 cases alone.
Yeah, just for 3 cases.
And the thing is we have so many more cases to cover.
Oh yeah.
Everything from unsolved mysteries, cryptids, murders, myths, legends. We have
basically.
If it doesn't have an answer,
yeah, we'll talk about it. Yeah, we keep saying 4-part miniseries. That does not mean that this is a 4-part series and then we're done.
Nope.
It's just our first episode is in 4 parts, talking about the Spies of Norway, and then we're on to other topics. But that is going to wrap it up for the Spies of Norway. So there we go. Thank you guys for sticking out for 4 episodes and checking it out. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from you guys so far, so thank you for that.
And like always, be sure to comment, like, share, subscribe, hit that subscribe button. But yeah, we love getting the comments, and he responds to almost every
single one. If I see a comment, I will respond to it. And in the meantime, yeah, definitely comment, and I'll do my best to respond to you.
Be sure to also check us out on our other social media sites.
Yeah. You got Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. All those addresses are at the end of the video. Of course, here on the channel, we do post videos every Monday through Friday, different types of videos every day. So subscribe so you can check all of those out. And I'd say out of all of those things, the most important ones being subscribe so you don't miss anything.
Yes.
And comment. Comment, guys. Let us know. What do you want to see next in this series of enigmatic events? We'll see you next time.